The emergency beacon crackled through space, its desperate signal reaching every civilized world in the Galactic Union. Commander Zephrix of the Altarian Defense Fleet gripped the communication console with his four-fingered hands, watching the holographic display show red warning symbols across 17 star systems. "This is Outpost Gamma 7, the transmission repeated for the 100th time. "We are under siege by the Vorthic Horde, estimated enemy fleet, 12,000 vessels. Our defenses are failing, requesting immediate military assistance from any Union forces. We have civilians, including younglings from 14 different species. Please respond." Zephrix closed his large amber eyes and felt his heart sink. The Vorthak were known throughout the galaxy as unstoppable destroyers. Their black ships moved like shadows through space, consuming everything in their path. They showed no mercy to any living creature, turning entire planets into lifeless rocks. In the Grand Hall of the Union Assembly, representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered around the massive circular chamber. The emergency session had been called immediately after receiving the distress signal. Floating above them all was a three-dimensional map showing the Vorthak fleet's position, growing larger with each passing hour. "The situation is clear," announced Prime Speaker Vorath, his crystalline voice echoing through the chamber. "Outpost Gamma 7 faces total annihilation. The question before us is simple. Do we risk our fleets to save 17,000 lives?" A representative from the Kelleran Republic stood up, his blue skin shimmering under the chamber's lights. "My government has run the calculations. Any fleet we send would be outnumbered 20 to 1. It would be suicide. We cannot throw away our ships and crews on a hopeless mission." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Nexari delegate, resembling a tall insect with 6 arms, clicked his mandibles nervously. "The Nexari swarm agrees. Our military advisors recommend we evacuate our border worlds instead. The Vorthak will move on once they consume Gamma 7. One by one, the major powers of the galaxy announced their decision. The Altarian Defense Fleet would not engage. The Crystalline Confederation declared neutrality. The Silicon Brotherhood calculated the odds as impossible. Even the proud warrior clans of Zarian, known for their honor and courage, chose to preserve their strength for a more winnable battle. Back on Outpost Gamma 7, Defense Coordinator Yoksa watched the scanner readings with growing despair. The massive space station housed refugees from 3 recent Vorthak attacks, filling every corridor and chamber with frightened families. Children of various species played in the recreation centers, unaware that death approached from the void. "Any response to our distress call?" asked her assistant, a nervous young Altarian whose scales had turned pale with fear. Yoksa stared at the communication board, where 17 different rejection messages glowed softly. "The Galactic Union has abandoned us," she said quietly. "We stand alone against the darkness." The Vorthak fleet approached like a storm of metal and malice. Their ships were angular and black, designed to strike fear into any who saw them. At the center of the formation floated their flagship, a massive dreadnought called the World Eater. Its captain, Warlord Krex, had personally overseen the destruction of 43 planets. "Status report," Krex growled, his scarred face twisted with anticipation. The Vorthak were a species that fed on conquest, literally absorbing the life force of those they defeated. Each victory made them stronger, more dangerous. "The station's defenses are minimal," reported his tactical officer. "Estimated resistance time, 6 hours maximum. No Union fleets are responding to their distress calls." Krex laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Of course they don't respond. The Union species are weak, civilized creatures who value their own lives above honor. They will watch from safety while we harvest these lives." In the depths of space, far from the main shipping lanes, an old human cargo vessel detected the emergency broadcast. The ship was called the Iron Phoenix, crewed by workers from the mining colonies in the Outer Rim. These humans lived on worlds, others considered uninhabitable, places where the gravity would crush most species and the atmosphere could kill with a single breath. Captain Sarah Chun, a woman whose arms were covered in scars from mining accidents, studied the message with interest. Her crew gathered around the small communication station, their faces weathered by hard lives on dangerous worlds. 17,000 civilians, she said slowly. And the entire galaxy just turned their backs. Her first officer, Marcus Torres, cracked his knuckles. He was a mountain of a man who had worked the titanium mines of Hellforge Prime, where the surface temperature could melt most metals. Union species always were soft, probably afraid of breaking a nail. Chun smiled grimly and activated the ship's long-range transmitter. She sent a message to every human world, every mining colony, every research station, and every cargo hauler in human space. The message was simple. The galaxy ignored a call for help. Should we ignore it too? Within hours, responses flooded in from across human territory. Ships that had been carrying or changed course, research vessels abandoned their missions. Even passenger liners full of tourists announced they were heading for Gamma 7. The galaxy was about to discover that humans from death worlds didn't calculate odds the same way other species did. They had learned long ago that sometimes the right thing to do was also the most dangerous thing to do. And when children were in danger, humans had a habit of doing incredibly stupid, wonderfully heroic things. As the Iron Phoenix set course for the battle, Sarah Chun looked out at the stars and wondered if they were flying toward their deaths. But then she thought about 17,000 frightened civilians facing monsters, and she pushed the engines to maximum speed. The cavalry was coming, even if the cavalry consisted of crazy humans who should have known better. The first human ships began arriving at Gamma 7 just as the Vorthak fleet entered weapons range. What the defenders saw made them question their own sensors. Instead of sleek military vessels, a ragtag collection of cargo haulers, mining ships, and converted passenger liners dropped out of hyperspace. "What in the void are those?" asked Yoksa, staring at the tactical display. The ships looked like they had been built in scrapyards, held together with welding patches and stubborn determination. Some still had corporate logos on their hulls, advertising mining companies and shipping services. The largest vessel identified itself as the Asteroid Buster, a mining ship designed to crack open space rocks the size of small moons. Its captain, a gruff woman named Elena Vasquez, opened communication channels with the station. "Gamma 7, this is Captain Vasquez of the Human Relief Fleet," came the transmission. "We received your distress call. Sorry we're late, we had to stop for supplies." On the bridge of the Iron Phoenix, Sarah Chun watched more human ships arrive every few minutes. The deep digger came from the sulfur mines of Brimstone 4, the radiation. Walker had been hauling uranium from the death world of Chernobyl. Prime, the icebreaker, dropped out of hyperspace, still covered in frozen methane from the polar mining stations of Frostbite. "V, Captain," called Marcus from the sensor station. "I count 47 human vessels so far, with more arriving. But these Vorthak ships are massive. Each one of their dreadnoughts outweighs our biggest mining hauler by 10 times. Sarah nodded grimly. "Good thing we're not here to arm wrestle them." "Open a channel to all human ships?" Throughout the makeshift fleet, human crews listened as their improvised commander spoke. "This is Captain Chun. I know what you're all thinking. We're outgunned, outmanned, and using ships that were never meant for combat. The smart thing would be to run home to our families." She paused, looking out at the Vorthak fleet preparing to attack. "But there are children on that station. 17,000 civilians who did nothing wrong except ask for help. Every major power in the galaxy turned their backs." "Well, we're not major powers. We're just stubborn humans from worlds that tried to kill us every day. And we don't abandon kids." A cheer went up across the human fleet, transmitted through dozens of communication channels. These were people who had faced death daily in the mines, research stations, and colonies of humanity's most dangerous worlds. They had survived radiation storms, gravity that could crush bones, and atmospheres that could dissolve flesh. The idea of overwhelming odds didn't frighten them the way it did more civilized species. Warlord Krex watched the human ships with amusement from his flagship. "What are these tiny vessels? Did the Union send their garbage collectors to face us?" His tactical officer scanned the human fleet with growing confusion. "Sir, these appear to be civilian ships. Mining vessels, cargo haulers, research craft. None of them register as military. Civilians? Krex laughed until his sides ached. The humans sent their workers and merchants to fight the Vorthak horde. This will be even easier than expected. Our warriors will feed well today. But as the Vorthak fleet moved to engage, something unexpected happened. The human ships didn't form traditional battle lines or try to match the alien tactics. Instead, they scattered in all directions. Using their superior knowledge of civilian ship capabilities, the asteroid buster, designed to survive in the hearts of exploding space rocks, flew directly into the Vorthak formation with its shields at maximum power. Vorthak weapons hammered against barriers built to withstand asteroid impacts, and the mining ship kept coming. "Target their weapons," Elena Vasquez shouted to her crew. These mining lasers weren't built for precision, but they cut through anything. The ship's industrial cutting beams, designed to slice apart asteroids made of solid metal, carved through Vorthak armor like it was paper. The aliens had never faced weapons designed for construction rather than destruction, and their ships weren't built to handle the sustained, focused energy of mining equipment. Meanwhile, the icebreaker used its specialized hull, designed to ram through planetary ice sheets, as a battering weapon. Captain Boris Petrov, who had spent 20 years breaking through the frozen methane of Frostbite 7, targeted the joints between Vorthak ship sections. "In the ice mines, we learned that everything has a weak point," he growled into the communication system. "You just have to hit it hard enough in the right place." His ship slammed into a Vorthak cruiser with the force of a controlled avalanche, buckling the alien vessel's hull and sending it spinning out of formation. The icebreaker's reinforced prow, built to survive collision with ice harder than steel, barely showed a scratch. The radiation walker had perhaps the most unusual advantage of all. Captain Kenji Nakamura and his crew had spent years transporting radioactive materials from uranium worlds, and their ship was essentially a flying reactor with the best radiation shielding in human space. "Their energy weapons aren't penetrating our shielding," reported his engineer with amazement. "This thing was built to contain nuclear explosions. These alien plasma bolts are like flashlights in comparison." As the battle intensified, the Vorthak began to realize they were facing something entirely outside their experience. These humans weren't fighting like soldiers or naval officers. They were fighting like people who had learned to survive in impossible conditions by being smarter, tougher, and more stubborn than anything trying to kill them. The human fleet moved through space like they were navigating asteroid fields, dodging debris with the casual expertise of people who did dangerous work for a living. Their ships might not have been pretty, but they were built to last. And their crews knew exactly what their vessels could and couldn't do on Gamma 7. The alien defenders watched in astonishment as the tide of battle began to shift. The Vorthak, who had conquered entire star systems, were being pushed back by mining ships and cargo haulers crewed by humans, who treated the deadly combat like just another day at the most dangerous job in the galaxy. The battle reached a new level of chaos when the human ships began using tactics that no military academy in the galaxy had ever taught. Captain Maria Santos of the Plasma Torch, a ship designed to cut through space debris, discovered that her vessel's waste heat exchangers could be weaponized. "Attention Vorthak fleet," she announced over open communication channels. "You might want to move away from my exhaust ports." Her ship had been designed to work near stars, venting superheated plasma as a byproduct of its stellar mining operations. When she opened all the heat exchangers at once, streams of star-hot plasma erupted from her ship like the breath of an angry dragon. Vorthak fighters, built for speed rather than heat resistance, simply melted when they flew into the superheated gas clouds. Warlord Krex watched his tactical display with growing fury as more of his ships fell to these improvised weapons. "How are they doing this?" he roared. "These are not warships." His science officer, trembling with fear, studied the human vessels. "Sir, they appear to be using industrial equipment as weapons. That mining laser just cut through our dreadnought's main gun. Another ship is using construction explosives as missiles." "Indeed, The construction ship New Foundation had just launched a salvo of shaped charges, originally intended to blast tunnels through solid rock. The explosives, designed to crack planetary bedrock, punched through Vorthok armor like it was made of tissue paper. Captain Liu Wei, who had spent 15 years building underground cities on volcanic worlds, grinned as he watched the results. On Magma Prime, we use these charges to dig through rock that's still molten. Alien metal is nothing in comparison. But the humans' greatest advantage wasn't their improvised weapons or industrial-strength equipment. It was their complete inability to accept defeat when lives were at stake. Every human crew had stories of impossible rescues, of pulling people out of collapsed mines, of surviving equipment failures that should have been fatal. When the research vessel Quantum Leap lost its main engines to Vorthok fire, Dr. Jennifer Walsh didn't retreat. Instead, she activated her ship's experimental gravity generator, originally designed to study black holes. The device created a localized gravity well that pulled 3 Vorthok cruisers together, crushing them against each other. "Fascinating," she commented calmly as she watched the alien ships crumple. "The gravitational stress exceeds their structural tolerances. I should write a paper about this." The mining ship Terraformer took a different approach. Captain Ahmed Hassan, who had spent his career reshaping entire planets for human colonization, used his planet-cracking equipment in ways its designers had never imagined. "On Granite 7, we moved mountains," he told his crew as he targeted the Vorthok flagship. "Let's see how they like having their ship move for them." His ship's massive tractor beams, designed to drag continents into new positions, locked onto the World Eater and began to pull. The Vorthok dreadnought, despite its enormous size, found itself being dragged inexorably toward an asteroid field that Captain Hassan knew contained unstable elements. Warlord Krex felt his ship shudder and struggle against forces beyond his comprehension. "What is happening? Why can't we break free?" "Sir," his engineer reported in panic, "they're using some kind of planetary engineering equipment against us. The gravitational stress is beyond our ship's design parameters." As the World Eater was pulled into the asteroid field, the unstable rocks began to explode around it, triggered by the dreadnought's own energy signatures. Captain Hassan had spent 20 years learning which asteroids were stable and which ones were bombs waiting to go off. Meanwhile, the passenger liner Sweet Dreams proved that even civilian transport could be deadly in the right hands. Captain Rosa Martinez had been carrying tourists to see the beautiful nebulae of the Outer Rim when she received the call for help. "Attention passengers," she announced over the ship's intercom. "We're going to experience some turbulence. Please remain in your seats and enjoy the light show." Her ship's observation domes were equipped with the most powerful telescopes in human space, designed to give tourists spectacular views of cosmic phenomena. Captain Martinez recalibrated them into focusing arrays, concentrating starlight into coherent beams that could cut through enemy armor. "On the cruise to the Crystal Nebula, we use these to show passengers the birth of stars," she explained cheerfully as she carved through a Vorthok fighter squadron. "Today we're showing them how things die." Even the smallest human ships found ways to contribute. The cargo hauler Penny Pincher, barely larger than a fighter craft, used its automated loading systems to launch cargo containers filled with industrial acid from the chemical worlds of the outer colonies. "I've been hauling toxic waste for 20 years. Captain Tommy Chun shouted over the communication system. "Time to make a special delivery." The containers burst against Vorthok hulls, releasing chemicals designed to dissolve the most stubborn mineral deposits. Alien armor, built to withstand energy weapons, had no defense against substances that could eat through solid rock. As the battle continued, something remarkable happened. Ships began arriving from across human space that weren't even part of the original call to arms. Word had spread through human colonies about the fight at Gamma 7, and crews were abandoning their regular duties to join the battle. The garbage scow Waste Not Want not arrived from the recycling stations of Industrial Prime. The deep space tug Heavy Lifter came from the asteroid mining belt. Even the cruise ship Starlight Romance, full of honeymooning couples, changed course to join the fight. "This is Captain Frank Morrison of the Starlight Romance," came a cheerful voice over the communication channels. "My passengers voted to help with the rescue. They said it would make their honeymoon more memorable." Sarah Chun watched her tactical display with amazement as the human fleet swelled to over 200 ships. They came from every corner of human space: workers, researchers, tourists, merchants, and families who had heard about children in danger and decided that their own safety was less important than doing the right thing. The Vorthek, who had conquered civilizations by overwhelming them with superior numbers and firepower, found themselves facing an enemy that grew stronger as the battle continued. Every human ship that fell was replaced by two more, as word of the fight spread and more crews abandoned their safe, profitable lives to join a hopeless battle for strangers they would never meet. The turning point came when the human fleet began to coordinate their chaos into something resembling organized mayhem. Captain Sarah Chun found herself accidentally in command of the largest volunteer fleet in galactic history, and she had no military training whatsoever. "All right, everyone," she announced over the general communication channel. "I know we're all making this up as we go along, but we need to work together. Mining crews, you know how to strip resources. Research ships, you understand weak points. Construction vessels, you're good at breaking things down to build them up again." The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Human crews began sharing information about their specialized equipment, comparing notes on how industrial tools could be used as weapons. The mining ships formed hunting groups, using their deep space sensing equipment to track Vorthak vessels through asteroid fields. Captain Ilana Vasquez of the Asteroid Buster coordinated with the other mining vessels. "Listen up, rock breakers. These Vorthak ships are just really ugly asteroids. We know how to crack asteroids. Form up on me and let's show them what real miners can do." The mining fleet moved together like a pack of mechanical wolves, their ships designed to work in perfect coordination when stripping resources from space rocks. They surrounded Vorthak vessels and attacked from all angles, using mining lasers and plasma cutters to systematically dismantle enemy ships piece by piece. Dr. Jennifer Walsh coordinated the research vessels, turning their scientific instruments into weapons of discovery. All research ships begin detailed scans of enemy vessel construction. I want to know every weak point, every design flaw, every place where their engineering failed to account for stress. Within minutes, the research fleet had analyzed Vorthak ship designs with the same intensity they normally reserved for studying new planets. They discovered that the alien vessels had a critical weakness. Their power distribution systems were centralized and poorly shielded. "Target their power junctions," Dr. Walsh announced. "Their entire ship will go dark if we can disrupt the energy flow from their main reactors." The construction ships, led by Captain Liu Wei, formed a demolition squadron. These were people who had spent their careers taking apart mountains and rebuilding them somewhere else. They approached Vorthak ships like construction projects that needed to be demolished safely and efficiently. "Remember, everyone," Liu Wei called out, "controlled demolition is about precision, not power. We take out their structural supports first, then let physics do the rest of the work." Even the passenger liners found their role in the battle. Captain Rosa Martinez coordinated them into an evacuation and supply fleet, using their large cargo holds and medical facilities to rescue crews from damaged human ships and provide emergency repairs. All civilian transports form a mobile repair base behind the asteroid field, she commanded. "We keep our fighters in the fight by making sure they can fight again tomorrow." The effectiveness of this improvised coordination stunned the Vorthak fleet. They had expected to face either a professional military that fought by rigid rules, or a chaotic mob that would break apart under pressure. Instead, they found themselves battling an enemy that combined the flexibility of civilians with the determination of people who had learned to survive by working together. "Warlord?" Krex watched his fleet's casualty reports with growing desperation. "This is impossible. They're using garbage haulers and tourist ships to destroy our dreadnoughts." His tactical officer's voice shook with fear. "Sir, they've destroyed 30% of our fleet. Their ships keep coming and they're learning our weaknesses faster than we can adapt. Some of our vessels are being taken apart by mining equipment. The truth was even worse than the reports suggested. The humans had turned the battle into a massive learning experience, with every crew sharing information about what worked and what didn't. When the waste management ship Trash Panda discovered that Vorthak ships couldn't handle the corrosive compounds used to break down organic waste, dozens of other ships began jury-rigging their disposal systems as chemical weapons. "This is Captain Murphy of the Trash Panda," came the cheerful announcement. "Who knew that garbage juice could eat through alien armor? I'm uploading the chemical specifications to the fleet database." Everyone with waste processing equipment joined the party. The most devastating discovery came from an unexpected source, the luxury cruise liner Golden Sunset. The ship's head chef, a woman named Isabella Rossi, who had been preparing dinner for wealthy tourists, made a connection that changed the course of the battle. "Captain," she called up to the bridge, "I've been watching the sensor readings while I cook. These alien ships, they're made from the same metal alloys we use for cooking pots on the high-temperature worlds." Captain Frank Morrison, who had been commanding a cruise ship for 15 years, understood immediately. "And what happens to those pots when they get too hot?" "They become brittle," Isabella replied with a grin. "Heat them up fast, then cool them down faster, and they shatter like glass." Within minutes, the information was shared across the human fleet. Ships with industrial heating systems began targeting Vorthak vessels with superheated plasma, while others followed up with coolant systems designed to bring mining equipment down from stellar temperatures. The rapid temperature changes caused Vorthak armor to develop stress fractures that spread across entire ship hulls. "All ships with thermal systems," Sarachud announced. "We just found their weakness. Heat them up, cool them down, watch them break apart. It's like making really ugly pottery." The Vorthak fleet began to crumble as their ships literally fell apart from thermal stress. Vessels that had survived direct hits from energy weapons started breaking into pieces when exposed to the temperature cycling that humans used routinely in their industrial processes. Warlord Krex felt his flagship shudder as stress fractures appeared across the bridge. "Retreat," he ordered. "All ships retreat immediately. These humans are not natural." But retreat was easier ordered than accomplished. The human fleet had spread throughout the system, with fast courier ships and cargo haulers tracking every Vorthak movement. Ships that tried to flee found themselves pursued by humans, who had learned to navigate asteroid fields and nebulae as part of their daily work. "This is Captain Yuki Tanaka of the Express Delivery," came a voice over the communication channels. "I've been delivering packages through this sector for 10 years. I know every shortcut, every hiding spot, every safe route. Nobody leaves without signing for their receipt." Her courier ship, built for speed and maneuverability in crowded space lanes, danced around Vorthak fighters like a butterfly around elephants. She led them into a trap where mining ships waited with their cutting beams charged and ready. As the Vorthak fleet fell apart, both literally and figuratively, the aliens began to understand that they had made a fundamental error. They had assumed that humans were like other galactic species, creatures who valued their own safety above abstract principles like helping strangers. Instead, they had discovered that humans from death worlds operated by entirely different rules. These were people who had volunteered to live on planets that could kill them, who chose dangerous jobs because someone needed to do them, who treated impossible odds as just another day at the office. The children on Gamma 7 were safe, and the humans had proven that sometimes the cavalry doesn't come from the military. Sometimes it comes from ordinary people who decide that extraordinary heroism is just part of the job description. The final phase of the battle began when Warlord Krex made his last desperate gambit. Seeing his fleet crumbling around him, he ordered all remaining Vorthak ships to concentrate their fire on Gamma 7 itself. If he couldn't win the battle, he would at least complete his original mission of destroying the station and everyone aboard it. "All vessels, target the station's reactor core," he commanded. We will deny these humans their victory by completing our harvest. The concentrated firepower of the remaining Vorthak fleet hammered against Gamma 7's shields, causing massive power fluctuations throughout the station. In the command center, Defense Coordinator Yoksa watched her defensive systems fail one by one. "Shields down to 30%, reported her assistant, his voice tight with fear. "At this rate, we have maybe 20 minutes before they breach the hull." But the humans had not come this far to watch their rescue fail at the last moment. Sarah Chun saw the Vorthak strategy immediately and began coordinating the human fleet's response. "All ships, new priority," she announced. "Form a defensive screen around Gamma 7. We're not here to win a battle, we're here to save lives. Everything else is secondary." The response was immediate and absolute. Every human ship, from the largest mining vessel to the smallest courier craft, moved to place themselves between the Vorthak fleet and the station. They formed overlapping fields of fire, using their industrial equipment to create a protective barrier of superheated plasma, debris clouds, and energy fields. Captain Elena Vasquez positioned the asteroid buster directly in the path of the Vorthak flagship's main guns. "This ship was built to survive inside exploding asteroids," she told her crew. "Let's see if it can survive something worse." Her mining ship's shields, designed to protect against debris traveling at significant fractions of light speed, held against the Vorthak bombardment. But the strain was enormous, and her ship shuddered under each impact. Meanwhile, Dr. Jennifer Walsh made a discovery that would change everything. While analyzing the Vorthak attack patterns, her research ship's sensors detected something unusual about the enemy flagship. "Captain Chun," she announced over the communication channel, "I'm reading massive energy buildups in the Vorthak flagship. I think they're preparing to overload their main reactor." The implications hit everyone immediately. A reactor explosion? From a ship that size would destroy Gamma 7 and most of the human fleet. The Vorthak were preparing to go out in a blaze of radiation that would kill everyone in the system. "Time to detonation?" Sarah asked grimly. 15 minutes, maybe less," Dr. Walsh replied. "The energy curve is becoming exponential." That's when Captain Boris Petrov of the Icebreaker made an announcement that stunned everyone listening. "I can stop it," he said quietly. "My ship's designed to handle massive impacts. If I can get close enough to their flagship, I can ram their reactor before it goes critical." "Boris, that's suicide," Sarah protested. "The radiation alone will kill you before you get close enough." The gruff Russian captain chuckled over the communication system. "Captain, I've been working with radioactive ice for 20 years. My ship's radiation shielding is the best in human space. Besides, someone has to do it, and I'm the most qualified." Before anyone could object further, the icebreaker broke formation and accelerated toward the Vorthak flagship. The ship's reinforced hull, built to survive ramming through planetary ice sheets harder than steel, was indeed the most likely to survive the intense radiation field around the World Eater. Warlord Krex watched the human ship approach with confusion. "What is that vessel doing? Do they think one ship can stop us?" His science officer studied the approaching vessel with growing alarm. "Sir, that ship's mass and velocity. If it impacts our reactor chamber at that speed, the collision could destabilize our overload sequence." But it was too late to stop the process. The Vorthak reactor was past the point of no return, building toward an explosion that would sterilize the entire system. The only question was whether Boris Petrov could reach them in time. As the ice breaker closed the distance, other human ships moved to support the desperate mission. The construction ship New Foundation used its demolition charges to clear a path through the Vorthak defensive screen. The waste management ship Trash Panda sprayed corrosive compounds to weaken enemy armor, while the research vessel Quantum Leap used its gravity generator to deflect incoming fire away from Petrov's ship. "Boris," Sarah Chun called over the radio, "you don't have to do this alone. We're all here with you." "I know, Captain," came the reply. "But this is a job for someone who knows about breaking things. I've been breaking through ice for 20 years. Time to break one more thing." The icebreaker slammed into the World Eater's reactor chamber with the force of a controlled avalanche. The impact destabilized the overload sequence, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of preventing the explosion, it channeled the energy into a directed blast that vented harmlessly into space, like pressure being released from a cracking glacier. Boris Petrov's voice came over the communication system one last time, weak but triumphant. Reactor breach contained. Energy vented to space. The children are safe. His ship had absorbed massive amounts of radiation, but its specialized shielding had protected the crew compartments long enough for them to complete their mission. The icebreaker drifted dead in space, but its crew was alive, and the Vorthak flagship was breaking apart around them, with their flagship destroyed and their fleet decimated. The remaining Vorthak vessels finally broke and ran. They fled the system in disorder, leaving behind the wreckage of the most powerful fleet they had ever assembled. On Gamma 7, Defense Coordinator Yoksa stared at her tactical display in amazement. The nightmare was over. 17,000 civilians were alive because a ragtag fleet of human cargo ships and mining vessels had decided that some things were more important than personal safety. "Open a channel to the human fleet," she ordered, her voice shaking with emotion. "This is Gamma 7 to all human vessels," she announced. "Your courage has saved every life on this station. The galaxy will remember what you did here today." Sarah Chen's response came from the bridge of the Iron Phoenix, surrounded by her exhausted but triumphant crew. "We didn't do anything special, Gamma 7. We just did what anyone should do when children are in danger. We showed up as rescue." Ships arrived to help with the wounded and damaged vessels. Word of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. The story of how human civilians had defeated the unstoppable Vorthak horde became legend, told in every cantina and broadcast on every news service. But for the humans involved, it was just another day's work. They had faced impossible odds before, and they would face them again. After all, when you choose to live on death worlds and work the most dangerous jobs in the galaxy, heroism becomes just another part of the job description. 3 months after the Battle of Gamma 7, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. In the Grand Hall of the Galactic Union Assembly, emergency sessions had been called to address what diplomats were carefully calling the human intervention incident. Prime Speaker Vorath stood before the assembled representatives, his crystalline voice carrying a note of embarrassment that surprised many in attendance. "We gather today to discuss the aftermath of our collective decision regarding Outpost Gamma 7. The Kelleran Republic's representative shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The blue-skinned diplomat who had originally argued against intervention now found his government's position difficult to defend. "The calculations were sound," he insisted. "No reasonable military analysis could have predicted success against such overwhelming odds." "And yet," interrupted a new voice from the gallery, "success was achieved." Everyone turned to see Captain Sarah Shun entering the chamber, still wearing her work clothes from the Iron Phoenix. She had been invited to address the assembly about the battle, though many representatives seemed uncomfortable with her presence. "Captain Chun," Prime Speaker Vorath acknowledged formally, "we have asked you here to provide your perspective on the recent events at Gamma 7. Sarah looked around the magnificent chamber, taking in the representatives from hundreds of worlds, all carefully maintaining their diplomatic composure. "You want to know how a bunch of miners and cargo haulers defeated the Vorthak horde when your professional military forces calculated it was impossible?" Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The bluntness of her statement made many delegates uncomfortable, but no one contradicted her. "The answer is simple," Sarah continued. "We didn't calculate, we just acted. When we heard that children were in danger, we didn't run probability analyses or strategic assessments. We asked ourselves one question: what kind of people would we be if we let kids die because the odds were bad?" A representative from the Silicon Brotherhood, his metallic voice resonating through the chamber, spoke up. "But Captain Chun, surely you understand that responsible governments must consider the cost in lives and resources. We cannot base policy on emotional responses." Sarah smiled grimly. "Emotional responses? We call it being human. And here's what your responsible governments missed. We didn't go there to win a glorious victory. We went there to buy time, to make the Vorthak pay such a high price that maybe they'd think twice about attacking civilians again. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who had accompanied Sarah to the assembly, stepped forward with a data pad. "If I may add some analysis," she said. "The human fleet's effectiveness came from 3 factors that traditional military doctrine doesn't account for." She activated a holographic display showing the battle statistics. First, our ships were designed for extreme conditions. Mining vessels built to work inside exploding asteroids, cargo haulers designed to survive navigation through debris fields, research ships engineered to operate near black holes. We brought industrial-grade equipment to a military engagement. The assembly listened with growing attention as she continued. Second, our crews had experience working in life-threatening situations as routine jobs. When your survival depends on split-second decisions every day, combat becomes just another workplace hazard to manage. And third, asked Prime Speaker VO RATH. Dr. Walsh smiled. Third, we weren't fighting to preserve our civilization or maintain territorial boundaries. We were fighting to save specific children whose names we knew. That changes everything about how you approach a problem. Captain Elena Vasquez, representing the mining fleet, addressed the assembly next. "You want to know the real difference between us and your military forces? We don't have the luxury of acceptable losses. In the mines, if one person dies, everyone has failed. We don't leave anyone behind because we can't afford to." A representative from the warrior clans of Zarian, species known for their honor and martial prowess, stood up. "Captain Vasquez, my people respect courage in battle. But surely you must admit that luck played a large role in your success." Elena laughed, a sound that carried 20 years of surviving in the asteroid fields. "Luck? Friend, we make our own luck. Every piece of equipment on our ships has backup systems, and the backup systems have backups. When you work in space, where equipment failure means death, you learn to prepare for everything." The discussion continued for hours, with human captains explaining tactics that military theorists had never considered. Captain Liu Wei described how construction techniques applied to demolishing enemy ships. Captain Rosa Martinez explained how cruise ship logistics systems had been adapted for fleet coordination. Captain Boris Petrov, still recovering from radiation exposure, testified via hologram about why ramming a reactor seemed like the most reasonable solution available. But it was. Captain Tommy Chun of the Penny Pincher, the smallest ship in the human fleet, who provided the moment that changed everything. "You keep asking about our tactics and equipment," he said to the assembly, "but you're missing the point. The Vorthak had better ships, better weapons, better training. They should have won, but there's one thing they didn't have." He paused, looking around the chamber at hundreds of alien faces. They didn't have 17,000 children depending on them. They didn't have families who would never see their loved ones again if they failed. They were fighting for conquest. We were fighting for something much more dangerous. "And what was that?" asked Prime Speaker Vorath. "Hope," Tommy replied simply. "They were fighting to take something. We were fighting to give something back. When you're fighting to give children a chance to grow up, you don't calculate odds. You calculate solutions." As the testimony concluded, the assembly fell into contemplative silence. Finally, a representative from the Nexari swarm asked the question that was on everyone's mind. "Captain Chun, what does humanity expect from the Galactic Union in return for your intervention at Gamma 7? Sarah looked surprised by the question. "Return? We don't expect anything in return. Those children are safe, and that's payment enough." She gathered her things and prepared to leave, then turned back to address the assembly one final time. "But I will say this, the next time someone sends out a distress call asking for help, and the question comes up in this chamber about whether to respond, remember that children somewhere are counting on the adults to do the right thing. And if the adults won't do it, the humans will." As the human representatives left the chamber, the galaxy's most powerful leaders sat in uncomfortable silence. The Battle of Gamma 7 had done more than save 17,000 lives. It had shown the entire galaxy what was possible when people decided that some things were more important than personal safety, political calculations, or military doctrine. Within a year, the Galactic Union would establish new protocols for emergency response. Inspired by human techniques and human values, military academies would add courses on civilian ship modifications and industrial equipment applications. Most importantly, no distress call would go unanswered again, but in the outer rim colonies and mining stations where humans lived and worked, life continued much as before. They had dangerous jobs to do, families to support, and ships to keep running. The fact that they had become galactic heroes was interesting, but it didn't change the basic truth they had always known: when someone needs help, you help them. When children are in danger, you save them. When the odds are impossible, you find a way to make them possible. And when the entire galaxy says something can't be done, you prove them wrong by doing it anyway. After all, that's what humans from death worlds do for a living.